Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome on stage your moderator and distinguished panelists.
Thank you.
All right. Salam alaikum, Mohammed, welcome, bienvenue. Welcome to the high-level capacity development talk on building capacity for Africa's economic empowerment amidst compound shocks. Quite a long title, but I think a title that summarizes the situation we are here today. This event launches our capacity development event series here at the annual meeting. I am Dominique Dervel, I'm the director of the IMF's Institute for Capacity Development. Before introducing the event and our distinguished speakers, I want to very warmly thank the authorities of Morocco for hosting us, for the wonderful hospitality, and obviously we want to express this solidarity with the Moroccan people for the tragic loss they have faced recently. Over this half-century, since the last time that the IMF and the World Bank had their annual meeting in Africa, and even more, over the last 20 years, we have considerably expanded our presence and capacity development work in Africa by creating 8 regional capacity development centers serving Northern and Sub-Saharan Africa, and also an extensive network of long-term experts. The African continent is the top beneficiaries of the IMF technical assistance and training efforts. During today's events, and as Africa faces acute macroeconomic challenge, we will discuss how capacity development building efforts can help Africa, both north and south of the Sahara, become the engine of the global economy, handle compound shocks, promote regional integrations, increase Africa's role in the world economy, and address fragmentations. I am extremely pleased to be joined today, going first on my left, by Governor Caroline Abel of the Central Bank of the Seychelles. Governor Abel was appointed governor of the Central Bank in 2012. She was the first woman in that role. She was reappointed in that same role in 2018, and as you can count for yourself, she had a great 11-year tenure. She has received numerous awards during her tenure as a central bank governor, including Central Bank Governor of the Year by the African Banker Award Committee, and also a recipient of the Global Women Leaders Award. Governor, welcome with us. Next to the governor. Next to the governor is the Minister of Finance of Sierra Leone, Sheku Bangura. The Minister Bangura was appointed in 2023. He was previously the Deputy Minister of Finance since 2020. During the same period, he was in charge of the national COVID response in Sierra Leone. He had a very extensive career in economic and development affairs, including at our sister institution at the World Bank for many years. And we had also the pleasure to have him in his early day at the IMF for short periods. Governor, welcome. We are very happy to have you with us.
Thank you very much.
And I should have said, for both the governor and the minister, they are very actively involved in the affairs of our regional development centers in their respective areas. For the governor, it's the Africa Training Institute and AFRITAC South, which are based in Mauritius. And for the minister, it's AFRITAC West 2, our center that is based in Ghana. And then at the far end from my side, IMF First Deputy Managing Director Gita Gopinath. Gita oversees a vast array of activities at the fund. I would mention multilateral surveillance, given that our flagships were released today. And most important for this event today, Geeta Gopinath is overseeing the fund's capacity development activity. As you know, she was previously the chief economist at the IMF and was a renowned scholar in many areas. So welcome. We'll just dive in, and I'll turn to Geeta to set the stage for us. Geeta, how does the IMF capacity development activity support Africa's economic empowerment?
Thank you, Dominique. It's a real pleasure to be here and a real honor to share this stage with the governor and the minister, whose views I'm very keen to hear about. And so this is a special event for us. When we talk about capacity development, I'm not sure many people know that capacity development work is a third of what the fund does. It's 1/3 of what the fund does. So we do surveillance, we do lending, and we do capacity development. And capacity development is a full 1/3. So it is, absolutely a critical part of what the International Monetary Fund does. And we are fully dedicated to the cause of supporting countries who are trying to strengthen their institutions, their technical expertise, their human capital in every which way we can. And if we look at the part of the world where most of our money goes, about 50% of our capacity development spending goes, it is to the African continent. So we spend about $150 million a year on capacity development initiatives in Africa. So, it is absolutely central to the work we do in this area of capacity development, and Africa is absolutely key to it. Looking ahead and just thinking about the many ways in which we are working with the region, I want to first recognize the context we are in, which is one of many challenges. The world has faced shock after shock. You had the pandemic, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, climate disasters, and these have created additional challenges for countries that are on the development path. It has shifted their course in terms of where they were expecting to reach. It's made it harder for them to reach their development goals. This is why we think it's very important for us to be deeply engaged with Africa. Given the many demands that are going to be there in terms of spending on the African continent, I think it's very important to recognize that it's not going to be a problem that can be solved only through international money. Domestic resource mobilization is going to be a very important part of the solution. And in capacity development work, when we're trying to help countries do revenue mobilization, Africa gets the vast majority of our support in this area in terms of raising revenues, mobilizing higher amounts of revenues to meet the critical spending needs. I should also mention that we are in the process of launching a global public finance initiative where we hope to raise around $200 million over the next 5 years to help strengthen the ability of governments to be able to realize the revenues that they will need for the development goals that they have to meet. And again, Africa will benefit from that tremendously. So in addition to this particular work streams, we're also very present on the African continent. If you look at what Dominique already said, it's just we have 8 centers in Africa, technical training centers in Africa. We just reopened the training center that we have in Lebanon, METAC. Morocco is a member of that center. We find this to be very important that we're on the ground close to where the country work is to be able to be effective in that work. And through these meetings, we're also looking forward to raising more financing for these centers. We've received a pledge from the European Union for the amount of about $25 million to help these 8 centers. We're also going to very soon sign a deal with the government of Mauritius, who's also giving a generous amount of financing for this purpose. We have also countries like China, France, and Saudi Arabia that are contributing to these centers. But again, none of this would have been possible if we didn't have the support of our colleagues in Africa who are using this capacity development technical assistance programs that we have. The strong support that they provide to it, the encouragement they give to donors to support these activities plays a very, very important role. So I thank you for that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gita, to set us off. Let me turn to the Minister. Minister, Sierra Leone has accomplished a lot of progress in strengthening economic institutions, policies, prioritizing investment in human capital development, in health, in education, and complementary investment to diversify the economy. How did Sierra Leone's efforts on capacity building help the country achieve this important milestone?
Thank you very much. So we've been receiving a lot of capacity development assistance from the fund, but not even only the fund, even the bank and other partners as well, broadly touching on large areas of economic and public financial management more broadly. And they range, like you have said, especially in the space of the Ministry of Finance and the Central Bank, whether it has to do with tax issues, whether it has to do with expenditure management, whether it has to do with central banking, but also even legal frameworks that are covering these areas to be able to ensure that we're able to strengthen our institutions. And I must say that in the current context where we are, it's becoming more important for this kind of support to our countries. And I will veer very quickly into areas of taxation. One of the problems we've been receiving in our country is that we do tax policies on an annual basis. And most of our engagement with our corporate businesses is that that does not provide room for predictability. So as recently as our engagement to the fund had evolved into us looking medium term into designing tax policies and tax measures so that it provides predictability for businesses who will be able to ensure that they can plan effectively into the way the government is thinking of mobilizing the revenues required to be able to respond to our development needs. So that's one big area that I think. But another area that we have seen difficulties has to do with expenditure management. Okay? And in expenditure management, I think it's not just beyond planning the budget and the like, but ensuring that you have efficiency, measures in ensuring that there's efficiency and effectiveness in utilizing existing resources within limited constraints, limited space, and ensuring that we understand how to utilize the limited resources that we have to be able to respond to the bigger demands that are out there. On the financial sector side, for example, much of the problem that we have in the financial sector has to do with ensuring proper forecasting for monetary policy purposes. But beyond that, most of our banks have been experiencing a lot of shocks, and they have to accede to basic principles. So prudential standards and banking supervision strengthening had been a lot of area of risk, which will require a lot of support. And I think the fund has been out there helping us very deeply. But the capacity building issues go beyond this, like I said. Laws have to be reviewed to ensure that they match up with recent developments. We've been talking recently as well on climate. And I must say climate change and the impact of climate and other issues bring problems to us. And so how do you build the institutions to ensure that we are resilient enough to do what? Use the opportunities that are out there, whether in the fund or other institutions, for doing what? Making sure that we are ready to develop the systems, policies, institutional framework, guidelines, or regulations to be able to tap into the new systems that are out there for mobilizing resources for climate finance. So there's a lot that is happening in the space, both on the monetary side, but also on the fiscal side, and other institutional architecture that I think the fund has been helping us with greatly over time. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister, for these fantastic examples. Turning to the Governor, Seychelles has been investing a lot of time and efforts in capacity building. You've been a very active member of the Regional Center for Southern Africa and the Africa Training Institute, I was saying earlier. How do you see these efforts paying off in terms of meeting your very own economic and development objectives, including in the context of the reform adopted in a new extended fund facility and the resilience and sustainability facility program?
Thank you, Dominique. For us in Seychelles, it has been a journey. Actually, this journey started in 2008 when we had to undergo major reforms across the board, central bank, Ministry of Finance, and also to build our statistical capacity. But when we were having this conversation, we also acknowledged that we had a young team across the system with limited experience. And this is where, alongside the program, we felt that it was important that we had a capacity building plan because we needed to elevate our technical capabilities. And this is where the significant engagement on capacity building with the fund and also with the bank accelerated. And we've had numerous programs. We are now on the 7th one. And each time we've elevated our capacity building needs. And that also remains across the whole system. And what I would say is that what we've seen is not just an increase in our technical ability. One other positive result of having the capacity building plan was also we've seen improvements in getting new leaders. For us, this has been a significant outcome of this program because we had a young population and we were also building leaders of the future. And using these channels with the Fund and the World Bank, it has helped. And I can say that in the team that we have attending these annual meetings, all of us have benefited, including myself. I've been a product of the capacity building of the fund, and we've seen over the years people moving from purely an officer and leading an institution. So for us, apart from enhancing our technical ability, we've also seen the result of creating leaders as part of the process. And in view that we have these continuous programs with the fund, it enhances our ability in terms of when we have the reviews. The staff today can have discussion with their counterparts with the fund and the bank. And with the new program that was approved this year, the EFF and the RSF, we are also putting a new request. Actually, just before this meeting, I was discussing new capacity needs for the climate. And this has been positively taken on board. And I think once you engage, the Fund and the World Bank is very positive in looking how you can be accommodated. So for us, it has been a positive journey, and I encourage all countries to tap on the facilities that the fund offers to continuously build our resilience from a human capacity perspective.
Thank you, Governor. Speaking eloquently about how different aspects of, the reforms, from the view of having a reform to implementing it, how that requires in building the people, and even more, as you said, creating leaders for the country. Maybe I'll turn back to Gita to say we've just heard, a series of really terrific examples of how capacity development really help things get done, right? And maybe Gita, if you want maybe to add a few more from other countries on the continent.
Yes, no, firstly, it was very helpful to hear from the Minister about the wide set of areas in which we help on the capacity development front. And Governor, your point about creating new leaders, I think that's great. And that you describe yourself as one of the people who came out of that program is really great to hear. In terms of effectiveness and where we feel like we are that we're seeing great outcomes. There are many examples, but since we are in Morocco, let me start with the example of capacity development that we've done with the Central Bank of Morocco, the Bank Al Maghrib, where we provided capacity development on how to improve supervision of banks, so banking supervision. And that obviously is critical for financial sector stability. This was a multi-step process. It was very involved, but thanks to the very close collaboration with the authorities, this was completed in a record time. So I think it's really congratulations owed to Morocco in completing this so quickly. So this, I would say, is one big, an example of an achievement. More generally, and I talked earlier about domestic resource mobilization and being able to raise enough revenues for your spending needs, and that's something that we've actually seen happening in several countries. We have examples here of Uganda, Senegal, Benin, Cameroon, and Rwanda. These are countries where we've seen revenue raise, their yield on revenues having gone up thanks to the engagement we've had both from them and from us, of course. Another big block of work that we've been doing, which is more recent, is on helping fragile and conflict-affected states. I think that is challenging work. We're working with authorities where, of course, the capacity to be able to implement is not that large. And therefore, we've tailored our programs to be able to work with these governments to do that on a long-term basis so that we can help them. So that's another area where I think we're making good progress. We've also helping many officials, including in Africa, on the more, the newer topics, which is on climate, on gender, digital services. These are, again, new areas that we're doing work on. For instance, on climate, we've worked with many countries in terms of how to do public finance management when you have climate goals. One of the points that was made also by the governor was this fact that, we get programs, we have lending facilities to countries, and usually with those programs, we're able to complement capacity development, and that combination can be very powerful. So I think our experience, Dominique, at least in terms of when is it that we find that our engagement works out to be effective, I think there are like three factors that matter. One is ownership, when the authorities own this and that you get the ownership from it. The second is continuous engagement, when this is not a one-off thing and we remain continuously engaged. And the third factor we find is quite important is proximity, which is that we're actually close. We're there on the ground working with the officials, close to where they are. I think these three factors, I believe, play a very important role. But I would very much like to hear from the minister and the governor on what they see as what makes our capacity development efforts effective.
Thank you, Gita. Well, that's a perfect link. Then you posed exactly the right questions to the governor or the minister. You were kind enough to say things in which we have been helpful, but we always look to the next things. You have, as the governor was saying, you have sort of this spiral of, ever more ambitious objectives. What can we do better? In which way, more different? What would help you achieve your goals? In how can we support you? And maybe also directly the question that Gita was asking: what do you think makes the capacity development successful? Right?
If I may start with the second part, I think the proximity increased the extent that we could access those facilities, because for us, I remember when we started the first program, to send staff to DC was becoming a problem. So having the center close to us in Mauritius, that was really helpful because we could send more staff. and also with the virtual channel now, also that also helps a lot. One other aspect that I've found over the years, the fund has become more engaged in terms of understanding the realities on the ground. Because I remember when we started in 2008, that was a critical component that at times the country authorities felt that the fund was not understanding the issue on the ground, and it was making discussion difficult. But over time, having that continuous engagement and having the team come on site, and even the team members, when they came on site, they say, oh, being in Seychelles, we understand the realities better. So that then they can tailor the program even better when we have the conversation. I think this is an element that we need to continue because at times understanding the specificities is important, and especially for small economies, given that shocks really hit us very hard, it's important to understand that aspect, and I urge the fund to continue on that aspect. One other element perhaps for us, again taking a position of small country, is that some of the standards, if I may use that word, being applied across the board as at times is constraining, because we take ownership and we want to be the best, but you find yourself constrained in not having perhaps enough flexibility to do things differently given the context. And I think the fund is moving in that direction, because we recently, when we had a safeguards mission, this is something we put on the table to look at small countries a little bit more deeper to understand those specificities in making sure that given the commitment that we bring on the table, how can we move ahead with some additional consideration for the context that we find ourselves. So I would say these are the main points on our side that perhaps the fund could look into a little bit more going forward.
Thank you. Minister, if
Yes.
I could ask you the same question. What makes in your view, capacity development effective, and what different can we do?
Thank you very much. Two issues come to mind in ensuring that the capacity support provided add value and are effectively implemented. One has to be our absorptive capacity. Given the people who are trained, that's one. And there are two issues there. The second is financial constraints. I speak of absorption capacity to the extent that you have small number of officials in some of our countries with fragile institutions, weaker institutions, who are involved in delivering on the training in different sectors, okay? So, and they undertake variety of tasks. And so we have to ensure that our support to these countries are carefully prioritized in the sense that the impact on the way they not only absorb but are able to implement the training being provided is done in a very step way. That's one. Second, and so prioritization with our partners, I think, is very important, so that at least we don't bunch TA on them. TA is coming from many institutions, and so I think even in the fund, it is important that is actually targeted and staged. Second is the cost of implementation itself. There are certain reform support that are provided will require investment. There'll be investment in the provision of hardware to back up some of the support that are required. If they are not properly planned for, then it undermines the effectiveness of utilizing the training or the support that has been provided. The third aspect that I think is also important, after COVID, I think there's a real value in ensuring, like Governor was said, in-person, but a relatively long-term engagement, I think, with governments. Before now, we used to do virtual or a mix of support, but I think there are clear opportunities in hand-holding, in critical areas of support that are required. I'll give an example in our case, whether it has to do with the central bank, for ensuring the capacity with prudential or banking supervision. In the Ministry of Finance, we're grappling with effective budgeting systems. How do you have people who stay with us for a short while or even long-term extension to be able to go through the full cycle of training and ensure that those capacities that are developed are staying with us and we are able to utilize them, and there's proof of the support that has been provided. I think with the current framework where we have COVID gone, people can travel now, I think we can give room to those kind of support that are provided. You may have to provide the support required there. I understand you are trying to mobilize resources internationally. I think it's important for partners to understand that this training that are provided by the fund are actually very valuable to us, and those little support go a long way. We are looking for even the training for a PFM specialist that will be long-term. One of the constraints that they told me is that there's funding problem in the fund to be able to ensure that they're on the board. So I think I could share that as well as some area that I think you should pay attention to. Ownership, I think most of the capacity support that are provided by us are backed by analytical work. It is the analytical work that diagnoses the areas of capacity support. We most times collaborate with the fund in ensuring that these diagnostics are done in collaboration, and that's where the ownership comes from. And our demand, we are the ones that actually are demanding or making the request for the areas that we think are most needed for the support. So it's not done like it's centered upon us. It's something that we go and discuss. I had a few discussions with the FAD Fiscal Affairs Department of the fund a couple of days, yesterday. And I was able to clearly lay out areas that I've identified that we think we need a home-based, at least for a medium to short-term period, that can handhold both our revenue authority, but also our capacity within the ministry to ensure that we can do both, not only budgeting, but wage strategy to be able to ensure that wage dispatches are actually analyzed properly. So those are the areas that I think I should share with you. I think we will be able to enhance the capacity of our engagement very effectively. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister and Governor. Great food for thought. I see the clock, and then we have times, maybe 10 minutes for questions from the audience. I think there will be microphones, and we'll start over here, and then we'll go. Yeah. And if you could just introduce yourself when you ask it. Thank you. No, not yet.
Very loud.
Please, go ahead. I see. Yeah. Here we are.
Brilliant. This is working. So thank you for the opportunity indeed to hear from the distinguished panel here. My name is Antti Karhonen. I'm Director for Sustainable Finance at the European Commission's Department for International Partnerships. Indeed, Africa has been hit by multiple shocks since 2020. And after COVID, the war in Ukraine has triggered, as we know, an energy crisis and high inflation globally. And the consequences have, of course, been quite dire. The increase in debt service payments crowds out essential public investments and social spending. And this comes at a time when we can no further delay investing in climate resilience. So therefore, we need to really look at our toolbox and do everything that we can using all those instruments to support African countries to ease this funding squeeze that is happening. And so I'm very glad to see this discussion taking place now also with the Governor Abela and Minister Bagura. So the European Union believes that capacity development to improve debt management, strengthening public finance investments, public financial management, domestic revenue mobilization is especially crucial. We have a slogan, we call it a collect more, spend better approach. And that is really the backbone of our thinking, and I fully in line with the IMF's on PFM and capacity building matters. We do have a very long-standing partnership with the IMF on these issues. And moreover, what we are doing with you on capacity building goes very much in line with our own budget support programs. And I'd also like to bring forward that it is very much in line with our thinking on trying to improve investment climate in our partner countries. By supporting reforms in fiscal policies and macroeconomic stability, we actually are helping to create an environment for both private and public investments that there can work towards sustainable development. And we think that capacity development is actually an investment in sound public policies that creates trust for private sector investments. This is what we are trying to do also with our Global Gateway strategy, which is our contribution to trying to narrow the global investment gap worldwide. And also it's a key vehicle for our delivery on the SDGs. So therefore, just to finalize this short statement, that's why we really are investing substantial resources into this partnership with IMF, as Gita, you mentioned a recent 25 million contribution to be topped up actually next year with another 25 million to the IMF regional capacity development centers. And so this is to support the continued progress in sub-Saharan Africa countries' reforms that relate to economic governance. So we believe that this contribution could help to address the escalating fragilities in sub-Saharan Africa, hardly hit, and also, as we have seen with the quite concerning developments in Sahel recently. We think that our support comes at a critical time to the region. So for the future, I think capacity development work really needs to keep up with the changing environment, changing world, and respond to the emerging needs from the region. So we stand really ready to continue this and look together how we can best support our partners. Thank you so much again for this very, very important event.
Thank you very much for your intervention, and really thanks for the great partnership with the European Union that is so essential. Maybe if I can just turn it into a question for the governor and the minister, and goes back to the question, Minister, that you have the point you were making before, that it takes capacity to build capacity, right? And so when capacity is limited, one really has to prioritize. You both face, multiple shocks, multiple policy objectives. How would you say you go about, setting these, in a sense, setting these priorities, and how can we help you, not deviate and then sort of push you into all sorts of various areas, but sort of really support your own priorities?
So let me start off. So in this multiple shock and I think permanent shock environment, the toolkits that you have, you don't need to start reinventing them. Okay, I think what needs to happen in the fund is to deepen the current engagement that are building the capacity of institutions in our country to respond appropriately to those risks. Okay, so that's the approach. So I'll give you an example of the climate space, where I think the fund has the resilience and sustainability facility, which some of our countries have started benefiting from. I think Seychelles has. But to be able to get access to this fund, there are conditions that have to be met. They require the building of the capacity of individual institutions. For example, they require you to do a report. There's a climate diagnostics of a given country, but also other needed issues like your CPMA, Climate Public Investment Management Assessment, and also you need to be able to do a climate PFM, among other things, but also your risk assessment or your readiness to be able to respond to disaster. Now, all of these require capacities in countries. Okay, and so so you need to deepen them. They are not new areas. They are areas to build our capacity to be able to do what? Tap into the climate opportunities that are out there for resource mobilization. The fund has one, but there are many others that are out there, and they will require that capacity to be able to access them. Secondly, we are doing a lot on gender budgeting, just to be able to ensure that we claw in the interest of effectively targeting investments that cut across the gender mainstreaming. There are areas that I think that are very important in terms of prioritization. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. I'm just trying to say, deepen the engagement on existing. Other domestic resource mobilization support, I think, are very important. Some of the area that we have problems is efficiency in expenditure, the effectiveness and utilization of your existing capacity. Maybe your revenue capacity cannot be stretched too much, but within what is being mobilized, how efficient are you in ensuring that you can deploy those resources appropriately? That's where we need much more. That's not new. It's existing support, so you need to deepen them, because in the current context when there are shocks, these are the areas that I think government will be able to make some leverage and leeway. I don't want to take all the time. I want to leave time for my colleagues to be able to respond. Thank you.
Governor, do you want to add something?
I think my intervention also is along the same lines. Actually, this is the conversation we're having with the fund, is with the new program under the RSF, is how do we use that IMF channel to attract other resources, because when we've looked at the context of climate for us, it's significant. The amount of resources is going to be massive, but at the same time we need to build capacity in that area. So it's how do we coordinate with the multiple channels so that we can maximize and get the benefit of where we want to be. But also I would like to add from the previous question in terms of building capacity, because a lot of times we look at the technical agencies like Central Bank, Ministry of Finance, statistical offices, and just before we came on stage, I was telling Dominic, another group that we need to extend a hand is the parliamentarians. We found in recent months where we have to bring new legislation, and when you sit in the parliament, the parliamentarians tells you, we trust you in bringing this piece of legislation. It's going to bring better things, but it's too technical, we can't understand. So you may find yourself in a difficult situation that something may be good, but because it's not understood, you may not get the approval.
Yes.
So what we've started to do, because we have a lot of financial bills coming to them, we are now having technical sessions with them before the bill is debated in the House. So I think also a component we need to look at that group is how do we bring the technical elements to them to make them more comfortable when those elements come for their consideration.
That's a great point.
We may have time for one quick questions. Maybe one over there.
Thank you. Halim Jadi from Central Bank of Morocco. I have a question about young population. Africa has a large base of young population compared to other continents. So how can this kind of building capacity program help further the policymakers and to strengthen the skills and the capacity entrepreneurship of young population? As you know, in Africa, we need to diversify economy. We need to have more educational skills and to improve the empowerment of our economics. So indeed, I guess young population need more attention in terms of skills, financial access to capital, and so on. Thank you.
Thank you. Who would like to have a go at this complex question?
That's a complex question. Well, in the area of youths, this is very broad because it's about job creation, and they have to permeate different sectors where the opportunities are. And so the building of a capacity among youth has to be defined by the structure of your economy and where the opportunities for job lie. That's the way that I'll look at it. Some of us are in the areas of agriculture, in the areas of mining, manufacturing. But there are basic skills that need to be developed around how you can be an entrepreneur on your own, to be able to permeate the opportunities that lie in each of those. So once you have basic level of education, it's about how do you use that capacity to be able to stand on your own. Other issues of access to credit are other areas, but how do you build the entrepreneurial capabilities to be able to tap into the opportunities that exist in other sectors? I would just want to throw a short light on that as well.
If I can share our experience, we find that the youth can capture things quickly. If we look at our capacity building process, it has been the youth that has driven that process, and we've seen that we've moved faster. But when you go beyond the agencies to the population, what we've done, because we did a study to look at financial comprehension in the general public, so the central bank started a program of financial education because we needed to bring that. And in the years ahead, we collaborate with some of the ministries, like the Ministry of Finance, Ministry of the Family, and Ministry of Entrepreneurship, to bring the other components to the youth so that they can stand on their own and be able to then go to the financial system and access finance. So this is how we are doing on our end.
That's entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
No,
Rita, you want to add a word?
I think the government and the minister gave great examples over here, but since we're out of time, I thought maybe I can just use this moment to say thank you to everybody for joining us, and also importantly, just recognize that our partners play a very, very important role in our ability to provide this kind of capacity development work. So thank you for that. And as I think has become very clear that there is a need for a lot more, and it should be provided on a continuous basis on the ground. And so we will strive to do that with the help of our partners and all of you.
Thank you.
So allow me to thank our panelists. Let me suggest we give them a round of applause. And let me finish just by saying that this is the first of our capacity development events. There'll be many more today and tomorrow on a variety of topics: public financial management, FruGovTech, building statistical capacity, strengthening financial sector stability, a peek into training on training in gender inequality and macroeconomics. There's also a capacity development experience exhibit, which is near the town square and food court. So please take advantage, do visits, and do attend these events. And again, shukran. Thank you very much.